Good evening, and welcome to the Tuesday, January 21st, 2014 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. Could I ask the clerk to call the roll, please?
Honorable Mayor Schoenheider.
Here.
Alderman Novit.
Here.
Alderman Waldeck.
Here.
Alderman Moore.
Here.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Here.
Alderman Tack.
Here.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Here.
Alderman Palmer.
Here.
Alderman Edelman.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Biddy, very much. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda this evening is reports of city officers. First item is comments by mayor. I have very little tonight. I did want to mention two things in particular. Number one, Michael Thomas, I want to commend you and your snow removal team. I can't tell you in the number of years I've lived in town how many positive comments I've had from residents this year. And we all know what a very difficult season it's been. I'm sure there's been very little sleep and a lot of long hours, and I think I will tell you on behalf of the entire community, we'd like to thank you and your team. You've done a terrific job, so thank you. I also want to mention the City of Lake Forest lost a great friend and a longtime resident in Wes Dixon last week. Wes was a great civic leader. He was certainly active in too many things to mention. He was certainly a leader in Lake Forest Day, Lake Forest Day Foundation. He certainly was active in the 150th anniversary event we had here in town, and in speaking with some people, including David Moore, and I'm going to ask David to say something in a moment, the things that he touched, both in Lake Forest and around the country, were just incredible. He was a tremendous, civically minded individual, and on behalf of the council, we want to express our sincere sympathy to his family. David, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah. Yes, I would just like to mention that Wes had a tremendous impact on conservation, on art, former chairman of the Art Institute, just some of his accomplishments. He was the president of the Boone and Crockett Club, which is responsible for everything from the Sierra Club to the National Park Protection to Ducks Unlimited to the Rough Grouse Society to most of these conservation groups. His wife Sue, who survives him, obviously, is very instrumental in the founding of Lake Forest Open Lands. And the Dixons are very good friends, and we're just really going to miss Wes, and we look forward to seeing the family tomorrow.
Thank you. And that's the end of my report. Next item on the agenda, comments by City Manager Bob Kiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. With the pleasure of the council, I'm going to flip-flop my agenda items because we have a few participants here this evening that we don't want them to miss their bedtime. So I would like to introduce Mary Van Arsdale and Dr. Penny Robbins, who are going to do a presentation on Kinderhaven.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. I thank you tonight for letting us have a spotlight moment here with some of our youngest residents of the community and the wonderful things that they do. Kinderhaven is a critical and vital part of the Recreation Center, and tonight we're going to give a presentation to you on some of the many wonderful projects that they work on that you'll see in one of our slides here support the pillars of what we've identified in our community as so important, philanthropic, the family, education, and tradition. And I think our program embodies that in so many ways. And so I'm going to invite Penny Robbins to come up. She's our Dr. Penny Robbins. She's our director of the Kinderhaven program. And I also wanted to mention Sally Swarthout is here and Joe Mobile, who also oversee the program for the rec department. And I'll let her take you through the presentation. I can guarantee at the end of this, what we have to show you will melt your heart on this very, very cold day. So, turn it over to Penny.
I want to thank the council, the mayor, for inviting us tonight. We're proud to be the city's preschool, and we love the opportunity to talk about everything that makes us unique. So I thank you very much, and I thank our families for coming, and we'll talk about them in just a little bit. We are the only Reggio-inspired preschool in this area. And our unique approach is highlighted basically by the emphasis that the children's quest for knowledge and their desire to learn should be their own course of action. So there's no preset curriculum, and because we believe that the children learn best when they follow their own interests, our teachers become co-learners with our children, and our children are co-designers of what they learn. We believe that our values are very much a part of the city's overall four-part mission, which is tradition, education, family, and lastly, I can't say that word, sorry. Oh my gosh, somebody say it
You know
for
what you
me.
mean.
Thank you. Which is what I want to focus on for us tonight. So these values, as we see in the city, are very important, and they're also extremely important for what we do at our preschool. So compassion is one of those three prongs of our educational system, which is the Reggio Inspiration, the long-term art projects, and then compassion. We believe in keeping with the Reggio Inspiration that children have rights, and with those rights come important responsibilities. And one of those is learning how to give back and make a difference in our world. And in this picture, you'll see a group of our children decided during a food-inspired project that they were working on, one of them had seen a homeless person in the city and was very upset about the fact that they saw them going into the garbage looking for some food. And so they asked, what can we do? Which is one of our questions that we encourage our children to ask. What can we do? And so they involved the entire school and all of our families in collecting food, and they were trying to raise 800 pounds, and they ended up with 1,000. So they were very excited about that. And those were distributed amongst different food banks in the North Chicago and Waukegan areas. Even in our 2-year-old class, the children begin learning about compassion and empathy. They learn how to use kind words. They learn how to have gentle hands. They learn that what they do and what they say really does matter. Compassion projects are then developed in all of our classrooms and school-wide throughout the course of the year. And this year, and in last year, we've also involved the recreation department and several people throughout the city in our projects. They're often very different every year as they develop naturally through what the children are studying. And again, the children in this photo were studying cooking. So they were doing an all-school food project and then ended up with the drive where they raised 1,000 pounds of food. One of the things that excites me the most about some of these projects is that our families are all involved, as well as our teachers and our parent board. The parent board will have their own compassion project that they do, and the teachers do as well, because we believe that modeling this type of behavior is essential for our kids. In 2013, we had some very great projects. In this picture, Reagan Brown, who's here tonight with her family, started her Dollar Difference project. And I'll tell you a short version of this story. Reagan found $1 out on our playground in a snow hill while we were playing. And she said to me, "This $1 isn't mine, what should I do with it?" And we talked about the options, and we decided that turning it into the front office was probably the best option. So she turned it into the front office at the recreation department. And the front desk person there told her that if somebody didn't claim it within a week, that she could have the $1. So as we were walking down the hallway back to the classroom, Reagan said to me, "Well, even if I get that $1, that's not my $1. I want to use it for something else." So we came back in the classroom and discussed as a class what we could do with the $1. And the children decided they wanted to repair a book that had gotten damaged in the classroom with the $1. So pretty soon, all the other kids started talking about if they put in another $1, what would happen. And soon we had this Dollar Difference project that was started with that one. We ended up raising over $5,000 for various charities because of families' involvement. And then over 200 volunteer hours alone were just logged from that one project. Another project we have is the S3 Kids, and the Sinclair family is here. And this was started by one of our alum, Stephen, who decided that he really wanted to be able to serve meals at some of the shelters. And of course, we know children aren't allowed to do that. So he wanted to try to make sure that he could be involved in that process. So with the help of his family, who've been extremely supportive and wonderful in this process. They have started this corporation or this project that creates bagged lunches for children, again, in the Waukegan, North Chicago area, prepared by children and given from the children to the other children. So they know more about what the kids like to eat and how to involve them as well. They've also done some wonderful things, such as having some after-school programs and hosting great arts and crafts time and giving away free books. They've done a wonderful job with that. And we were excited this year as a school to be able to help support them in that project by donating mittens, hats, gloves, and books, and one class took it on their own as their own project and provided some other things as well for these bags. So Stephen and his mom came into the classroom to talk with the children about what their project is all about. So we're very proud of their family for the way they've carried this tradition of our school on. This project was a 40 Days of Kindness. And we had logged over 4,000 acts of kindness through this one project. In October, each child and family was challenged to do and record one act of kindness per day for 40 days. And the rec center staff also joined us, and we were very excited about that, and the parent board and the teachers participated. And then the children came in with different ways that they chronicled those. So it was something as simple as picking up some trash out in front of the neighbor's house, to baking cookies for the fire department. Each child was very involved, and the documentation is fantastic, and we have a lot of that still in our school. This was the last one that we've done so far, and this is the Washington, Illinois Tornado Relief Project. And I have a personal feeling about this, as this was my hometown area. So many of my family and friends were involved in losing their homes and possessions during this. So really within a matter of days, 3 days, I think, to be exact, Suzanne Sands, Sarah Lockhart, and their families were able to help rally and coordinate this project of giving donations, gift cards, money, which Kelly sent one of the teachers and art director there, and myself drove down to Washington and delivered personally to the Crossroads United Methodist Church, which was the FEMA shelter and also the shelter for many of the families there. We will continue probably to keep updated on that project in particular as we head into the spring and the rebuilding starts down for that project. But it was a monumental experience to see what our families, when we only have about 60 total families that were involved, the way they rallied around and did what they did for this project. In this picture, the children are celebrating a day of blessings and happiness, and so they were giving out purple ribbons to help remind people to be kind and to use kind words. And this is, of course, our own Sally Swarthout, whom the children love to visit. And they were delivering purple ribbons around to help remind people of that. It's important for us as people who are helping form the lives of these children to help them understand that they are connected so heavily with everyone else in the world, and that what they say and what they do matters, and setting strong patterns for them to grow up and be the kind of people that we want in this world, who understand the needs of others and who are willing to step forward and say, yes, I will take this on, I can make a difference. So we're very proud of everything that they have done. I want to thank everybody that's here tonight, the Brown family. All of these families who are part of our Kinderhaven community continue to be involved in every project, but some families take on special leadership in different projects. And Reagan kind of drug her family into it, and they were great. They responded with a wonderful enthusiasm and support. So we're really happy to have them here. We're happy to have the Sands family, who she's not only served as our parent board president in the past, but is still a member and has always participated in every single one we have. And this is Sarah Lockhart, who's going to speak for just a second, our current parent board president, and the Sinclair family, who have all gone through Kinderhaven, are gone now to other schools, but we are happy to have them back and a part too. So I'm going to let Sarah say a couple of words, if you will, Sarah.
Well, I'm Sarah Lockhart. I'm the current chair of the Kinderhaven Parent Board, and I was just going to say a couple things about why our program is so unique, especially with respect to the compassion element. There's a huge buzz in the community. I don't know if you guys are aware or how old your kids might be, but Kinderhaven really is unique in that we are the only Reggio-based program in the area, and the compassion element is so important to me, and I think I can speak to most of the families in our preschool that that's one of the big reasons why we send our kids there. Even at the youngest ages, in our purple class, our 2-year-olds turning 3, these children are, kindness and respect for others is an expectation at school. It's not just, something that's taught. And I know you can talk about these things at home, but these kids, this is what, it's just wound into what they do at school every day. And they have these compassion projects that you start out, with your families doing at ages 2, 3, and 4. And by the time they're in the red class, which is our pre-K level class, that's when Reagan just came up with this on her own, because it just kind of becomes second nature to these kids. And it's great to see, and the parents become so invested in it. And then by the time, my oldest daughter, who's here right now, is in kindergarten, and I go out of my way just to keep her involved in, give her more opportunities to, give back and be a part of the greater community. Because it really is important. And I know it sounds cliche, but I really think that, the best thing we can expect out of our kids is to be really nice, kind, compassionate people. So the time to start is now, and so we should be proud that this is our city's preschool. So, all right. And hopefully my son won't turn the presentation off.
Before we have questions, I want to play the video that we made, and I want to thank, even though she was sick today, Kelly Sun, for putting this together for our families. And these are all words in this presentation that the children themselves have.
Give a little bit. Give a little bit. Give a little bit of your love to me. Give a little bit. I'll give a little bit of my love to you. There's so much that we need to share, so send a smile and show you care. I'll give a little bit. I'll give a little bit of my life for you. So give a little bit. Give a little bit of your time to me. See the man with the lonely eyes. Oh, take his hand, you'll be surprised. Give a little bit. Give a little bit of your love to me. I'll give a little bit. Give a little bit of my life for you. Now's the time that we need to share. So find yourself. We're on our way back home. Going home. Don't you feel the need to feel at home? Oh yeah, we gotta sing do 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 do. Don't you need to feel at home? Oh, we gotta sing do 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 do. Don't you need to feel at home? Ooh, we gotta sing do 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 do. Don't you need to feel at home? Ooh, we gotta sing.
Each one of those, the pictures and things that were in there were different projects too that the kids had done, like all the cards they had made for a little boy whose sister had passed away unexpectedly, and so they had gotten together and we made him cards that they could send, and we sent them every day so that he would get them every day up until Christmas. So that was one of the things he wanted. And then they also had made cards for some elderly people that they knew were going through a hard time. One of the kids came in with that, and so they wanted to make cards. So that's kind of was the impetus behind that project. So anyway, that's kind of some of the things that we do. Do you have any questions or anything about Kinderhaven?
Questions for Dr. Robbins? Doctor, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
You, the parents, the families, and the great kids for sharing so many great things about Kinderhaven. Now, it's time for bed.
Thank you, Penny. I think they all deserve ice cream before they go to bed. I could say that because I'm not buying it for them.
Yeah, your kids are growing up.
The next item on the agenda, and I don't see, is Jack Meyerhoff here? He's, okay, well, in your packet you had an announcement about the Rotary Club of Lake Forest Lake Bluff annually has a fundraiser, and this year the fundraiser is an economic breakfast, and I thought it was timely because of all the conversations we've had, because it's fiscal state of Illinois, fitness or folly, and the city will be having a table there, so if anybody's interested in attending, please let me know. But that completes my report for this evening.
Great. Thank you, Bob.
That discussion shouldn't take much time.
No.
Which part?
Mr. Polly.
Next item on the agenda, comments by council members. Alderman Moore?
I just would like to personally thank the fire department. We had a frozen pipe at our house, and I have to tell you that they came, they squeegeed, they rolled carpet, they helped out. It was, I was out of town, of course, and my wife was there to handle it. But I just want to say thank you. It was a remarkable effort. So I really appreciate that. My wife does too.
Any other comments by council? No other frozen pipes? All right, next item on the agenda, opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. Would anyone like to address the council on a non-agenda item this evening? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda, items for omnibus vote consideration. We have 3 this evening. I'll read all 3 of them. If any of the council would like to take them individually, we can do so. Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion for all 3 and ask for a vote. Item number 1, approval of the January 6, 2014 City Council minutes. Item number 2, approval of sales contracts to purchase Wedgewood Properties lots 22 and 24. Item number 3, Illinois Department of Transportation resolution appropriating $1,720,000 in motor fuel tax funds to be used for the 2014 annual street resurfacing program. Any item to be taken separately? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
And move to approve the 3 omnibus items
Do we have a
as
second?
presented.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
8 yea, motion carries.
Thank you, Betty, very much. Next item on the agenda is ordinances, and we do not have an ordinance on the agenda this evening, so we'll move to the next item on the agenda this evening, which is new business. First item under new business, consideration of a recommendation from the Plan Commission in support of tentative and final plat approval for a 2-lot re-subdivision, the Greenbrier re-subdivision. The property is located on the north side of Greenbrier Lane, east of Maywood Road, and is commonly known as 700 Greenbrier Lane. Approval of a motion granting tentative and final plat approval. presented by Kathy Cerniak, Director of Community Development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is a recommendation that comes to the City Council from the Plan Commission. As the mayor noted, this property is located on the north side of Greenbrier Lane, very close to to South Park, located in the area known as the Northmore neighborhood. This property is part of an area that was subdivided in the early 1920s. The existing house on the property was constructed, too dark, I apologize for that, was constructed in the early 1950s. A longtime owner of this property, which totals just over 44,000 square feet, recently passed away. A developer purchased it as part of a settlement of a trust. This property is zoned R4, so properties in the R4 zoning district must have a minimum lot size of 9,300 square feet. So this property, as it's configured today, is significantly larger than the minimum lot size. As subdivisions go, this two-lot subdivision is very straightforward. However, the Plan Commission did hear from particularly the neighboring property owner to the east with concerns about drainage. So although the subdivision itself is very straightforward, the Plan Commission took a step back and asked us to do some due diligence. So we would look forward to the time when these two lots were developed, the existing house demolished, and make sure that the drainage issues would not be worsened in this neighborhood. And in fact, the developer prepared these conceptual plans. These are not footprints of real homes prepared for this site, but just to talk very briefly about drainage, I know that's not directly in front of you tonight, but I do want to assure you and the neighbors, again, the parcel is in this area. It's proposed for subdivision into two properties. The interesting thing is that the rear of this area, the rear of these properties, used to be a ravine, so there is a lot of water in that area. As part of redevelopment of these lots, this lot will be regraded. This area, the back area of these properties that today holds water, will actually be regraded to hold a larger volume of water than it holds today. That water will still need to move east, and in fact, legally, it's required to be allowed to move east. However, with this area being regraded to hold more water, it will actually improve downstream conditions. During normal storms, most of the water stays in this area. One of the requirements of the Plan Commission is that a new storm drain will be put in by the developer at the time these lots are developed to bring this water out to Greenbrier. Like all sanitary sewer systems in the community, the sewers in the Northmore area are only sized to handle certain size storms. So on occasion, this area does surcharge. This intersection becomes flooded, and when it does that today, it moves back and moves pretty quickly to the east. With the regrading, this water will move back when, on the rare occasions when this does surcharge, will move back into this area, fill this area, but again, will still need to flow to the east across this property. As a follow-up to the Plan Commission meeting, City staff has talked to the neighbor a number of times. Several members of engineering staff and planning staff went out and met with the neighbor, walked the site to really understand firsthand the problems that she faces. Again, we believe that with development of these lots, the conditions to the east will be improved. And to assure that, the Plan Commission actually recommended 3 conditions of approval for the subdivision. One, that as part of development of the lots, as I mentioned, that a new private storm sewer be installed, which would be generally along the property line between the 2 new lots, that a drainage easement, a protected area, be established on the rear of those lots to assure that that area could never be filled, could never be developed with a garage or with a shed. And finally, that when we do receive engineering plans for those properties, that we contact the neighbor to the north. I'm sorry, the neighbor to the east. That will be a great time to share copies of those engineering plans, but also the city will work to facilitate, if there's interest, some improvements on the neighbor's lot as well. Because although currently the water on the neighboring property flows through in this area, if at the time this is regraded, there was also some regrading that happened in this area, the flow of water could be pushed back away from this house and prevent flooding that currently occurs at that house. So that's a little bit longer than I would normally talk about this subdivision, but I wanted to let you know that the Plan Commission did carefully consider that drainage. What you have before you is a recommendation for tentative and final approval of the subdivision. Since it is 2 lots, no public improvements are required. If you choose to do so, it would be appropriate to approve a motion granting tentative and final approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kathy. Any questions for Kathy?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I've gotten numerous calls from the neighbor in the area, and I know you've worked closely with the neighbors to try to come up with an appropriate plan, as have the developers. The development's great, but again, this has to be done on a block-wide plan to be successful. And I'd hope in the future that the neighbors could be in a position to participate in that regrading program to improve the drainage in that entire area. But it's going to take the cooperation of the neighbors to this development to have greater success. Yeah, and again, I just appreciate your time and effort on achieving that.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Kathy?
I
Anyone-
believe you may have 1 or 2 neighbors who wish to speak.
Anyone from the public that would like to speak on this matter? Come on up, please. If you'd state your name and your address.
My name is James Hopkinson. I live in Greenbrier Lane, 744.
Microphone, please.
And I will, is this okay? I will preface my remarks by saying that I'm aware that you get numerous residents appearing before you to oppose projects based on their personal preferences or pure conjecture or just frivolous issues. I'm not here to waste your time on that kind of thing. I was unable to attend the Plan Commission meeting which dealt with this subdivision request. However, I have viewed a video of that meeting, and it's clear that they did not understand the magnitude of the situation they were dealing with. I'm not criticizing them. They're not familiar with the situation. They did talk about drainage, as was explained here. They focused on the lot itself and how the water could be channeled from the front to the back, as was indicated. And they also talked about the effects on the neighbor to the east. That was pretty much the sum and substance of the discussion itself. Now I'd like to talk about the real situation. Not sure if I can get this. Not that clear.
I think it's...
Many years ago, there was a storm late on a Saturday. It wasn't a monster storm, but it was a pretty big one. About an hour or 2 after that storm had subsided and was then down to a drizzle, my neighbor and the then city manager, Jerry Hagman, and I, the 3 of us, went to this lot. We all had boots on. We couldn't go into the back because the water was so deep. My neighbor put on hip waders and went into the yard. The water at that time was then down to about hip deep. We then went to the street, and it's important to understand that, I hope you can hear me.
Could you turn that around? It's upside down on our monitors. Thank you.
Yeah, that Greenbrier, the street.
Mr. Hopkinson, I think I'm going to ask you to perhaps move the microphone over towards you so everyone can hear. Thank you.
Greenbrier, the street, rises just east of this property. So water from the street enters this lot because the lot is lower than the elevation of the street to the east. And as we stood there that night at the driveway, water was clearly coming down Winston Road directly to this lot because of the slope of Winston in that direction. So we walked westward on Greenbrier on the gradient going up to Maywood Road, observing the water rolling down it toward this lot, rolling down Greenbrier. When we reached Maywood Road and looked south, that same steep slope that's at Winston exists at Maywood, as was the water coming down Maywood onto Greenbrier. So we walked north on Maywood, uphill, continuing to watch water rolling down toward Greenbrier until we reached Washington. At Washington, when you look east, there's a steep slope with water, and obviously with the water coming down in that direction to Maywood and then on to Greenbrier. We then went west on Washington Circle, again going uphill, observing the water rolling down it onto Maywood and then on to Greenbrier. When we reached Ryan Place, the grade levels out. By that time, we were blocks away from the 700 Greenbrier lot. But what was clearly observable was water coming from all different directions headed toward Greenbrier and ultimately this lot. And that's not water that just, will eventually migrate its way there. That's water that's channeled by concrete directly to this particular point. And the effect can be enormous. If we step back for a moment, what you have in front of you is a simple division of a large lot into two. So what's the big deal? Well, we're here in a warm room, all nice and dry. The big deal is that on a night with thunder and lightning and the rain pouring down, this lot turns into a nightmare. There is water coming from all different directions, and it is headed right here. And you don't have to take my word for this. Let's look at what your, not my consultant, had to say about this very issue. This is a graphic that was included in a report by a consultant hired by the city to look at the stormwater problem on Greenbrier. And obviously it's a little hard to see, but the number 1 on this graphic points to the lot that is the subject of this subdivision request. And as clearly noted, 55 acres of Lake Forest is draining directly to this property. And that's not just water that will eventually make its way there. Now, water in a violent storm is being channeled by the city's streets and sewers directly to this location. And that's from 55 acres of the neighborhood. The house that's there now, which has no basement, has flooded. However, it's instructive to note that the water has gotten so high that it entered the prior owner's car when it was parked on the driveway, which is in front of the house and not anywhere near the back elevations where they're really low. When this lot fills up, then the water flows eastward all the way to Sheridan Road, with serious potential consequences that a flooding can cause. It has flooded the basements of house after house after house, with the consequences that result. The water has been so bad on some occasions that it has broken down the doors of some of the houses. When someone sees this thing in action, their reaction goes from a skeptical, yeah, right, to something like, holy point. When this thing really gets going, it's hard to believe the volume and velocity of the water involved. For house after house on Greenbrier, this isn't a problem. This is a really big problem. So what should be done? Well, at a minimum, there should be 3 requirements for approval. First and foremost, there should be a detention basin of at least 10,000 cubic feet. And that's over and above the compensatory retention of the normal development process. Compensatory storage, as you may be aware, is storage created by removing surface material elsewhere on a lot to offset the loss of water storage capacity due to infill on which to construct the new houses. So what I'm talking about is 10,000 cubic feet over and above that compensatory storage amount. And why 10,000 cubic feet at a minimum? Well, we can get all wound up in a detailed analysis regarding storm assumptions or topography or the BFE. Instead, let's look at just the basics. The existing house that's on that property, which has no basement, and the existing garage, both rest on the finished grade, which means they haven't been raised to any significant extent, and they will be torn down. In their place, 2 large houses are going to be constructed, and both are going to require infill. If you assume 2,500 square foot footprint for each of those houses, that's a total of 5,000 square feet. And 2,500 square feet per house is certainly a reasonable estimate. Keep in mind that that will include a multi-car garage, possible court area, as well as a driveway from the street to the house for each of them. In addition, each of those houses will have to be raised above the base flood elevation. And by ordinance, that infill has to extend 10 feet around each of the houses. So 2,500 square feet per house is probably a very conservative estimate. If you take that 5,000 total for the 2 houses and multiply it times 2 feet, you get 10,000 cubic feet. And why would you multiply it by that? Because that's about the average depth the water reaches on the majority of this lot during a really big rainstorm when the storm sewers fill up or they're blocked by debris.
Mr. Hawkinson, I don't mean to interrupt you. Typically, we allow about 5 minutes for everyone. It's an important topic, and I understand it's important to you and the council. Certainly, you have their attention, but I might ask you to wrap it up in a moment or so, if you could.
Well, I'm acutely aware of the time constraint here, and I recognize that everyone in this room would like this agenda item to be over. By the same token, this is a serious problem. My comments are pertinent, factual, and non-repetitive. Plus, I'm going to offer a proposal to reach a solution on this.
And I can't disagree with anything you've said. Your comments have been very good. You did offer a proposal, and I think the council would be interested in hearing it.
Okay? The 10,000 cubic foot detention basin, as I said, is one of the major requirements. It won't eliminate the stormwater problem, but it will provide certainty of some offsetting capacity. And it's not that large with respect to the lot itself. That's a 1-foot depression over an area 100 feet by 100 feet. And the lot itself is over 44,000 square feet. So the detention basin wouldn't even be a quarter of that total, and it could be contoured, split up, or otherwise adjusted to accommodate the development. If you kind of wonder about this rationale, then look at the Lake County Watershed Development Ordinance. That ordinance requires that new houses be raised 2 feet above the base flood elevation, which is 2 feet more than the National Flood Insurance Program requires. And why did they do that? Because they knew that calculations can't be exact, and every situation can vary. So they did it as a safety factor, which is what the storm detention basin would be. The second of the 3 minimum requirements relates to the storm sewer. I'm now aware the city put in a 15-inch line onto this property, which connects to the sewer in the street. The idea was to help drain the property, as was explained, but the problem is that during a big storm, water is being forced into it and surcharges on the property. So if the situation isn't bad enough already, you have the storm sewer system of the city surcharging and adding more to it during a real storm. At a minimum, there should be check valves on that line and any extension thereof, which would prevent that surcharging. The third requirement relates to the grade of the lot at the street. The top of that finished grade along the north side of Greenbrier should be raised at least 8 inches. By increasing that elevation, it raises the level which the water must reach before it starts pouring into this property. 8 inches isn't a lot, certainly not in the context that we're talking about, but it does buy some time. And when you're trying to manage water from a storm, time is crucial. Because if the storm is intense but diminishes after a short period, then flooding can be avoided. Yes, it would initially raise the level of water at the intersection, but only by 8 inches maximum. And in a really big storm, that water is going to overtop that increase, and the intersection itself won't have any more water in it than what occurs already. In summary, this isn't a straightforward subdivision of a 1-acre lot. From a drainage perspective, this is a 55-acre lot. And if you were presented with a request regarding 55 acres, you'd be all over the storm drainage issues. And this isn't theory. It's been well documented for decades that this lot has serious potential drainage problems. It may not be the worst in all of Lake Forest, but I'd be very surprised if it's not in the top 10. And no matter how you twist and turn this thing, water from 55 acres is headed to it. In summary, or in conclusion, I'll say these 3 conditions are reasonable requirements to address a serious situation. It would defy logic not to impose them. Legally, you can't approve a subdivision if it will increase drainage problems unreasonably to a significant extent. Conversely, you have the power to impose reasonable conditions on a subdivision to address drainage issues. And if you do so, it'll benefit three parties. First, the developers. These are two very desirable lots, which unfortunately are the epicenter of a major drainage problem. Who's going to want to buy into that? The second group are the buyers of this property. They're going to get water, and potentially a lot of it. These requirements will ensure some positive steps were taken to address the situation. And the third group are the adjacent owners. Those conditions would ensure that at least something was done to prevent an already bad situation from becoming worse. I hope that you never get water in your homes, but if you do nothing, I hope you at least, think about this lot and the adjacent owners when we have one of those monster storms, and at least wonder how bad the flooding might be, knowing that you did nothing to help the situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Any other members of the public that would like to make comments on this particular matter? Ma'am? I'd ask you to come up and state your name and your address, please.
Hi, I'm Ann Russell. I'm the neighbor to the east. And I would like to say that Jim has done an excellent job of putting out the problem out there. And I was originally very upset because I just can't imagine how you can put two large properties there with all this water. But I do feel that the city has done its best to work with me, and I'm encouraged by the conditions that they have set forth. So I don't know how to work this. Do you just lay them down? I just wanted to leave you, I don't know if it's going to show, but this is a picture of the deer in our yard, and this is probably why we fight so hard to stay there in spite of all these challenges. And I have not had water in the house in 10 years. But again, Kathy, I don't know if you can help me. This is the yard we're talking about after the 1.5-inch storm in November, and this is my yard. So at the end of this process, I'm hoping that this will not reverse, that I'll be the person with all the water in the yard, and they'll be the person with no water. And that's what I want you to consider when you think about this subdivision. I'm not opposed to development, and I'm not opposed to the subdivision, but I just don't want to make my situation worse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public that would like to address the council on this matter? If not, Kathy, could you come back up?
Actually, I'd like to ask Bob Ells, the engineering supervisor. He has been out on the site personally, and he can respond to some of the comments.
Good evening. Well, I think as Kathy first stated, the area in question was a ravine at one point, and it was filled in when this area was first developed. So yes, there is a lot of tributary area to that. 55 acres is probably right on. There is a lot of water coming through there. The plan that Kathy showed that the developers came up with is not, as Kathy explained, the official footprint. They have not submitted an actual engineering plan. That was an example that was done to show that the requirements of the watershed development ordinance could be satisfied if that lot was subdivided and two homes were built. And they did prove that. They did show that. They also showed that there would be less stormwater overland over into Ann's property, and we went over that with her out on site when we were out there. We also went over some things that could be done, I think as Kathy mentioned earlier, to move the overland drainage route on Ann's property further to the north, which is away from her house. once that was done. So I don't think there's anything, the watershed development ordinance will actually require less runoff onto the neighboring property. So once a final plan comes in, an actual plan, it will be reviewed. It will be reviewed to make sure that it complies with the watershed development ordinance. And I have no doubt that it will make the situation to the east just a little bit better than it is today.
Questions for Bob?
I have a quick one, because Mr. Hopkinson said he wasn't able to make it to the Plan Commission, and I would assume that you were there?
No, I wasn't.
Or maybe the question's then for Kathy. Is there anything new that's been brought to light that causes you pause, or is this as well prepared and as well presented as Mr. Hopkinson made his presentation? Is there anything new that would cause you pause?
The Plan Commission didn't hear that very detailed presentation, but we have been, at the staff level, working on this area for a number of years. So I don't think any of the information that was presented here tonight is a surprise to our engineering staff. And I think that the conditions recommended by the Plan Commission really go over and above what would normally happen with the subdivision. And as Bob Ells mentioned, engineering staff will review plans for new development on both of these lots, and those plans will need to meet the watershed development ordinance. And given the sensitivity to the properties to the east, we will work closely with those neighbors, offer them the opportunity to review the engineering plans, and potentially even expand the grading project to try and make some real difference.
And just a quick follow-up to that, is there any recourse for neighbors should the plan not work in general in situations like this?
I'm going to ask the city attorney to respond to that one.
Alderman Moore, members of the council, the Illinois Drainage Act does protect generally property owners from improper diversion of stormwater from property to property, and that is something that would exist even if compliant with the terms of the ordinance, if that's the result. So there are protections, and the standards are set out both in the act as well as in case law in terms of not redirecting nor increasing the flow and rate of stormwater runoff.
Can you give me an idea of what those protections are after the fact? So in other words, we approve development, it's done, there's significant detrimental effects on neighboring properties. Then what? Give me an example of something's done that's done after the fact that actually protects those people.
Well, I think that in looking at that issue, you want to take a few steps back in terms of the actual development approval process. We do have a requirement that the watershed development ordinance be complied with. Under that ordinance, and Bob Ells may want to elaborate, but under that ordinance, there are requirements for demonstrating the flow of the water through topographical surveys, for maintaining and developing, if necessary, detention areas. All of that's identified in order to ensure that the water goes where it's supposed to go and does not exceed that rate. If, for example, that's accomplished, but there still is some kind of additional flow that's coming off, and I will say that as a matter of practicality, that's not always something easily determined, especially if there's not a baseline study beforehand, but someone would have the ability to, if it's, say, a matter of blockage, to go onto another person's property and remove a blockage that might be affecting drainage. If it's a matter of improper implementation, they would have the ability to seek recourse in the courts, and the courts could require actions that will either redirect or stem the flow of the water.
Yes. You want to come up to the microphone, please?
One problem that has not been brought up
Yeah, could you-
Where's it? Over here?
There we go.
One problem that has not been brought up is that there are no storm sewers for quite a ways for the property to the rear. From Cherry Avenue, 4 or 5 streets over, there's no storm sewers. So all that water does come down toward Greenbrier, and then the storm sewers at Greenbrier and Winston are overcome by that amount of water. So I don't know how a change from the city ever gets onto the agenda. I can't imagine that they would modify the storm sewers before this property is developed. But that is a big issue for those of us on Greenbrier.
Any other comments or questions of city staff? Bob? Or
Just a comment. The subdivision doesn't seem to be the issue. It's the fact that it's a watershed for 55 acres. And the additional impervious created by the subdivision is less than 0.2%. If we're looking at the effective drainage area of 55 acres. So, Mr. Hopkinson's detailed information is very informative, yet it really underscores the need for storm drainage in this particular area to help the entire 55-acre runoff. It sounds like the Plan Commission and engineering and Kathy's department considered all of the pertinent factors, and the two-lot subdivision is designed to improve the drainage in this immediate area, not to contribute to making it more adverse. So I'm not troubled by the subdivision as proposed. I'm troubled by the fact that we probably gonna have to spend some real capital dollars here to improve the drainage at this intersection.
any other comments or questions?
Kathy, when was this whole area originally done?
The north side of Greenbrier was subdivided, I believe, in 1923.
Were all these other things around then, or, I mean, to the north, south, east, and west, or was this one of the first?
I can't tell you that off the top of my head. Generally, this area was developed early, 1920s and 30s. Although homes weren't built, most of the homes were not built until the 50s. So generally, the area was subdivided at about the same time.
Because just looking at the plat, and there may be a reason this property is as big as it is, and it may be because everyone realized there was a drainage problem there. And I agree with Alderman Edelman. I think we got behind this. I mean, we are not ahead of the curve here. Somewhere we missed the ball on the drainage in all these areas, and it is an issue we should address. I'm inclined when a situation like this comes up is to just leave things as they are rather than approve something and change the status quo. I'm also inclined to give deference to subordinate boards when they do their work. So it kind of cancels each other out on this. But I think we really have to be careful here. And at the very least, do no harm. Hopefully improve the situation just as this development goes. But then I think as a city, we have to look at this whole area and see what we can do.
You know, if I remember, Michael, a couple of months ago, we had a consulting engineer come in and make some recommendations about future capital expansion improvement relative to stormwater. And if I remember right, this area was not on that kind of their top 10 hit list. And based upon, I think, a lot of what we've seen and heard tonight, it appears like perhaps that was a mistake. And maybe it should be going forward.
Sure. And listening to your comments and the testimony this evening, we will. We can take a further, closer look. Northmore subdivision in general, that was one of our largest storm sewer projects that we did in the late 90s. Whispering Oaks followed. So we have done some improvements, but obviously there's some more that we need to investigate and address. So we will do so.
You know, somebody mentioned this had been a ravine. And if the rear end of this lot is a low spot for all 55 acres, not to play engineer, if we put a giant storm inlet at the back of this lot, at the north end of this lot, and then ran it east to Sheridan Road and permitted other inlets on other people's backyards, maybe that would eliminate the problem. Plus, with that north-south lateral you have going out to the street that will backflow, pick up the water in the street, take it to what I'm talking about.
Do you have a comment?
We should look into it.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that, as Mike indicated, this was looked at in the 90s. I think what you're looking at, though, is the involvement of multiple private residences, because this is what's going to take place. And then it gets into a bigger policy in terms of, do we use an SSA? What do we do exactly? So with the assistance maybe of the 2 First Ward aldermen, we're happy to convene a meeting with these residents, but as Ms. Russell showed you her backyard and how heavily wooded it is, if we are to recreate that, that will wipe all of that out. And I think it's just important that the homeowners understand what the implications will be and what, you know, they have to contribute or not to correcting this situation, because as Kathy's pointed out, this has been around for a long, long time, and at what point do we take on responsibility for what's been a private issue for 70-plus years?
I would just like to echo Alderman Edelman's comments. I think there are two different issues here. There's the issue of the subdivision, which is obviously gone to some lengths to ensure that, or the conditions of the subdivision are going to some lengths, and the developers are going to have to go to some lengths to ensure that we take the opportunity of the subdivision, which happens all the time with these kinds of situations, to improve the existing situation. But this lot can't be expected to fix the situation that existed when they filled in a ravine. So I think reasonable to expect that the engineering being resolved, being upgraded through the subdivision process will not make the situation worse. It'll probably make it marginally better. That may or may not be perceptible in a major rainstorm, but typically the city takes the opportunity when these kinds of proposals come forward to insist that the situation be made better on the margin and not contribute to anything, at a minimum to make it better when we know there's a problem. And I'm sure that the engineering work will result in that. Depending on how much it rains, you might or might not be able to perceive it on a given day. But I think that the subdivision is one issue, and I think that's probably been adequately reviewed and engineered or conditioned. And the other issue is, what do we do about this? And you can see that the homes are situated toward the front end of the lot across the board here, and that's probably for those same reasons. This has obviously been an issue for a long time.
I support that point of view, and I would like to make a motion to move forward with the resolution.
I think if we could, Alderman Reisenberg, we need a final plat approval for the Greenbrier re-subdivision subject to conditions as recommended by the Plan Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Biddy.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you, Biddy. I want to thank the residents, too, for coming and sharing the information with the council. I think it's helped us better understand the circumstances in the neighborhood and certainly brought it to the forefront, and we won't forget about it. So thank you. Next item on the agenda, consideration of a recommendation from the Plan Commission in support of the overall site plan, architectural design, exterior lighting plan, and landscape concept plan for the revitalization of Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital, presented by Kathy Cerniak, Director of Community Development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This project is not new to you. And to start off with, I want to just refresh your memory on the timeline. Beginning probably mid-2009, 2010, early 2010, the hospital project team began working with city staff in preparation for bringing forward a new master plan to support the revitalization of the Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital campus and the associated special use permit. Those preliminary meetings, I think, maybe started 18 months before we first took the project for information to the Plan Commission in September 2011. Alderman Reisenberg was chairman of the Plan Commission at that time. The Plan Commission followed that introductory presentation with, I believe, 4 more meetings, and in May of I have my date wrong. In May of 2012, the Plan Commission recommended approval of the master plan and special use permit to the City Council. City Council heard that recommendation, I believe, on 2 or 3 occasions, challenged us to refine some of the conditions and the master plan itself. And then in October of 2012, the City Council approved the master plan and the special use permit. Those documents are in place, and nothing that's brought before you tonight changes those documents. As directed by the Plan Commission, as required by the special use permit, the detailed development plan process then got underway. Consistent with the direction from the City Council, the City Manager appointed the Hospital Advisory Committee, a 9-member group, including 1 member of the Plan Commission, and various members of the community who had expertise in a wide range of issues, engineering, construction, landscape, architecture, building operations. That group met, I believe, on 8 occasions, 8 or 9 occasions, from January of 2013 through the fall. In December of 2013, the Plan Commission heard a recommendation from the Hospital Advisory Committee in support of approving a series of detailed plans for the hospital. You do, in your packet, have the detailed report and evaluation from the Hospital Advisory Committee. And what is before you tonight is a unanimous recommendation from the Plan Commission to approve the overall site plan for the hospital, the architectural design for the replacement hospital building and medical office building, approval of the exterior lighting plan, and approval of the conceptual landscape plan, the landscape themes. The detailed plans that are still in progress are the overall signage plan and the detailed landscape plan. It is not unusual for landscape plans and signage plans to come forward later in the process. In fact, I think many times the experience of our boards and commissions and staff is that once the project begins to take shape, details get refined, that it really is easier to more fully evaluate both signage and landscaping. So those plans are yet to come forward to the Hospital Advisory Committee, the Plan Commission, and those will come back to the City Council. You do have a fairly detailed packet on this. I'm not going to go over everything, but I do just want to hit on a couple key issues. I think I'd like to repeat some comments from Augie Zuccarelli, the comments he made to the Plan Commission. As I mentioned, he served on the Advisory Committee as well, and in December, Commissioner Zuccarelli explained to the Plan Commission, I think he reviewed probably about 16 to 20 items on which the Advisory Committee focused, and he made the point that the group didn't just spend 5 minutes on each of those items, that in most cases they spent a significant amount of time and discussed items over several meetings with various revisions. So I won't discuss all 20. But I do want to hit a couple issues that really generated the most, or maybe some lingering comments. Open space, traffic circulation, and building height. I'll start just very quickly going over the overall site plan. The area in which the replacement hospital will be located is identified as the central campus. Right now, I think most people refer to that as the cornfield. As part of the master plan, there was direction to design the replacement hospital in a way that really promoted access to the hospital, ingress and egress from the east and west, to try and pull some of the traffic off of Deer Path. And in fact, the hospital has advanced a key piece of that project. The connector road between the hospital campus and Route 41 is in place and opened just before Thanksgiving. The hospital, the new hospital is sited consistent with the discussions away from Waukegan Road. It pulls significantly further from the existing residential than some of the existing buildings. and really orients toward the center of the campus and promotes that east-west connection. Just a few comments on open space. The master plan did require preservation of open space. As part of the master plan, there are no build areas identified on the south, west, and north sides of the campus. A 200-foot setback is required by the master plan, and in fact is reflected on the detailed plan adjacent to the Lane Lorraine neighborhood, a 250-foot preserved area along Waukegan Road, and a 75-foot area along the north side, Westmoreland Road. This 75-foot setback from the south side of Westmoreland Road combines with the width of Westmoreland Road itself and the 75-foot setback on the Lake Forest Place side, and gives us, I believe, about a 175-foot setback from the buildings in Lake Forest Place. The special use permit further required that not only that setback areas be identified, but that some portion of the campus be set aside as permanent open space. In the resolution that's before you tonight for approval, I believe in the first condition, by approving that resolution, you would direct the city manager to enter into a declaration of open space, which would further identify, although these areas are already identified as no build areas on the detailed plan, would further identify these perimeter areas as permanent open space. So with the approval of the resolution tonight, city manager would enter into that declaration, and that declaration of open space would be recorded with the deed to the hospital property. Second issue I wanted to mention was circulation. The Plan Commission did hear from some residents in Lake Forest Place. They continue to be concerned about how traffic may impact Lake Forest Place, how this, the spur road that would really bring people in off of Westmoreland directly to the main entrance of the hospital, how that intersection could potentially impact the cottages in this area with headlights, and how those turning movements would occur. There are also conditions recommended by the Plan Commission in your resolution that speak to that. As the circulation plan is finalized, the exact configuration of this intersection will be refined, and it's possible that the more dominant movement may actually come in this way, softening the turning movement from for the residents from Lake Forest Place as they're getting on Westmoreland. And importantly, consistent with the master plan, as the emphasis was on directing traffic east and west, by creating the spur road, in combination with the connection that has now been made to Route 41, this entire length of Westmoreland will actually see reduced traffic, because people coming to and from the hospital will not be on this portion of Westmoreland Road. But as I mentioned, there are conditions in the resolution that direct us to really continue to work with the hospital team. Engineering staff will work with the hospital team to refine how this exactly works, and to make sure that it minimizes any impact on Lake Forest Place residents. Finally, I wanted to mention the height issue. That was certainly a topic of much conversation, maybe even hours of conversation before the Plan Commission during the discussions of the master plan. The hospital, as it's proposed today, no portion of the building exceeds the 81-foot maximum height limit that was established. Every portion of the hospital is lower than what was originally approved. Although I'm not going to go through all the plans, just a quick glance for anyone who may not have seen it of the architectural concept for the building. Certainly in the packet you received, the 25 pages provided some additional detail on the architecture. You also have a copy of the exterior lighting plan, as well as the landscape concept plan. And so I will just close at this point by just reviewing that you do have a resolution before you with a recommendation from the Plan Commission to approve that resolution. That resolution affirms that the detailed plans presented to date are consistent with the master plan and the special use permit. The plans before you for approval are the overall site plan, the architectural design for the replacement hospital, the exterior lighting plan, and the conceptual landscape plan. The resolution, as I mentioned, further directs the city manager to finalize the declaration of open space and to see that that document is properly recorded. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kathy. Before we get to you with questions or comments by the council, I'd like Tom McAfee, if he would, who's president of Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital, come up and just make a couple of comments. Tom's been here more than a couple of times over the last few years. And as we're approaching what appears to be the finish line, it'd be great to hear a couple things from you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Schoenhunter and members of council. I would just like to say thank you. Thank you for your patience as we've worked through this this complicated process. I have to say it was a little bit more detailed looking back than I ever anticipated. But I could tell you that through all the feedback from the Plan Commission to the Hospital Advisory Committee to the feedback that we received from our neighbors and our campus partners, that through that we had the right design team, because all of that feedback has resulted in what we believe is truly a phenomenal project. It will be a first-class facility in every respect. And I'd have to say that it's not just to serve us and our families and our neighbors and our community at large. It's to serve generations, so that we've been in this community for 115 years, and I could tell you that that this will make certain that this hospital continues to serve our healthcare needs and advance the healing mission of Northwestern Lake Forest well into the future. I'd also like to thank the city staff. Kathy Cerniak and her team and Bob Kiley have provided phenomenal counsel. And we recognize that designing this hospital is only a piece of it. I think we promised once we had completed the land use plan that that we were going to make every effort to bring in the right design team that understood our community. And I think that you can see as a byproduct of that team that they have absorbed all of that feedback and recognize the DNA of our community, and as a result have advanced a project that fits nicely within the context of our community, but also reinforces the clinical excellence that's expected by our medical staff and Northwestern. And finally, I would just like to say that we recognize building this project is going to take us a few more years. We're committed to making sure that we maintain open communication with our neighbors and our campus partners, and we'll work closely with the city to make sure that we execute on this project as well as we have to date on the planning of the project. So again, thank you for your help in getting us to this stage.
Thank you, Tom, very much. I want to take the opportunity to thank you and your staff and everyone at the hospital, and certainly everyone at Northwestern Medicine for your patience and your willingness to work with us in what appears to be an extraordinary end result. And I know we're just getting started, but to have the type of project and the type of world-class healthcare here in the Lake Forest community we're incredibly fortunate. And we're very grateful to the hospital and to the entire team that you had to put forth for your patience and your willingness to work with us, and what I think is a great end result. And I'd like to also thank the City Manager's Healthcare Advisory Group. They did an enormous amount of work, hours and hours of reviewing documents, reviewing plans, providing feedback. They were a great advocate, I think, for the process. And I want to thank them on behalf of the council as well for all the effort that they put forth in this process as well. Questions or comments by council? Tom, thank you. To Kathy, to Jack?
As the former Plan Commission chairman, I couldn't be happier.
As another former Plan Commission chairman, I would agree with Alderman Reisenberg.
Yeah, right. Tremendous job. Far exceeded my expectations. Far exceeded my expectations. To you, John, and to the other members of the advisory committee. Job well done.
Any other comments? Bob, anything from you? Well, if there are no other comments, I would look for a motion to, approve the resolution affirming conformance with the special use permit and the master plan, and approving the overall site plan, architectural design, exterior lighting plan, and the landscape concept plans, all subject to conditions as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I make that motion?
You may make that motion.
So made.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Biddy, could I ask for a roll call vote, please?
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Congratulations. It's great news. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, approval of a resolution directing staff to prepare a contract for police and fire emergency 911 dispatch services with the Village of Glenview. Bob Kiley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This also is a topic that has been before you for a number of years. It actually dates back to 2010 when the City Council participated with the City of Highland Park and the Village of Lake Bluff in a shared fire service report. And one of the recommendations and observations that came out of that study was the opportunity that availed itself through centralized dispatching. In July of 2012, we engaged the Matrix Consulting Group to come in and take a look at the opportunities that were there for the three communities to share the central dispatching operations for public safety in the three communities, and look at multiple options that existed out there, including just remaining as is or status quo. The Matrix Group in September submitted their preliminary recommendation to the Shared Services Task Force that reviewed it at multiple meetings, made the recommendation to the three municipalities at a joint meeting on December 17th, 2013, that we move forward with a proposal to consolidate the three operations through the Village of Glenview with a backup redundant facility located in the Public Safety Building for the at the City of Highland Park. The resolution that is before you this evening does not make a final decision, but merely is just another step in the process by directing the city manager and the city attorney to work with the respective managers and legal counsels for Highland Park, Lake Bluff, to negotiate a contract for services with the Village of Glenview that would then be brought back to the three respective governing boards, along with performance metrics that are being worked on as well. And I think all of you have seen the emails or have received phone calls from people that are very concerned about making sure that the quality of service that our dispatchers currently provide our residents will be maintained under any consolidation scenario going forward. And so that will be a very important component to make sure that if we decide that we are moving in this direction, that the move is as seamless as possible, and an individual picking up the phone and calling for emergency assistance either from the Lake Forest Police Department or the Lake Forest Fire Department would not see any difference in the quality of service from what they experience today. So I'll be happy to answer any question. Included in your packet is a copy of the resolution. This is an identical resolution that was passed last Monday by the City of Highland Park, and next week is on the agenda for the Village of Lake Bluff.
Thanks, Bob. I may ask Alderman Palmer as well, who's been intently involved in this for the last year or so.
Yes, really.
Any comments?
Been living with this. And I also went through the Citizens Police Academy. So I met our dispatchers. I saw them in action, and I went out on a ride along and I saw how they interacted with our police department. And frankly, I'm very impressed. I'm impressed with them as people. I'm impressed with the system. I'm impressed with the camaraderie. I'm not sure we'll ever have that kind of camaraderie with this system. But one of the things that I did pay particular attention to is, from a resident standpoint, will there be a material drop-off in the quality of service? There will be some changes, but I believe we are addressing them as well as possible. And I don't think there will be a material drop-off in the service we provide. I think it will be just as safe. In many ways, we'll have greater backup than we would have had otherwise. We'll have redundancy. You know, the people that are there right now, they're not armed. They don't have the ability to run into the lobby and stop something. They will stay behind the glass. The fact is, it's always been a situation where if there's a problem and you need to come to the police station at any time, we will get you an officer. I mean, the officers are patrolling the village, the city at all times, and they can be there in a matter of minutes. So I think some people had concerns about that. Again, the convenience, maybe there may not be quite as much convenience if you want to pay a parking ticket at midnight, but I think we've addressed it. I'm satisfied. As a resident, I think it will be every bit as good. Maybe not quite as convenient as before, maybe not quite as personable as before, but I don't think there'll be a material drop-off in the quality of service that we'll be able to provide our residents.
And, I just want to say I'm all for continuing the conversation and continuing to examine this, but I do have some real reservations about this. And it's very difficult for me because we have a system that works extremely well. And it's difficult for me when we have something that works as well as it does to talk about changing it. And I'm all for saving money. I think saving money is great, and we could save a lot of money. But this is one of those areas where we don't want to drop off in our service even a little bit, because even a little bit is material. And when, Grandma picks up the phone because Grandpa's having a heart attack, and literally 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds is a matter of life and death. It's just one of those areas that we just can't afford to compromise at all. And that's a real concern for me. And if we go down this path and we're not happy and our community is not happy with the service that's being provided, how do we go back? I don't know that we can. So I'm not saying we shouldn't continue to examine it, but I just wanted to say I have some real reservations.
And same as Kathy, I have reservations to change a system that's working. However, as a city, we have to explore ways to, again, optimize our revenues, optimize what we have. There are changes, obvious changes in communication that we didn't have 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and communication and technology is improving all the time. It's a little different than the 1960s when we pick up a phone in our kitchen to call the emergency services. Communications are quicker, they're much more precise, they're much more capable, and they're only going to develop in a better means in the future. We have an obligation to explore it, and certainly we'll do that, certainly we'll proceed with caution. We're not voting today to make a decision or a final decision on this, but I think we have an obligation to move forward to explore what our options are. So I'd support the resolution that's in front of council today, but to emphasize to everyone watching that we're not making a final decision on this today. We're merely going ahead to prepare contracts.
Any other comments? If not,
Yeah, I have to admit I'm torn too. $1.9 million over 5 years is a lot of money. It's $400,000 a year. And then I think, well, it's $62 a household a year. And you can do that with every line item in the budget, and then it doesn't seem so painful. $400,000 is a lot of money, $62 isn't so much. But I'm torn. I've read the emails from residents who are in favor of keeping things the way they are. And yet every $400,000 we save is significant. So the one question I do have is, if we pass this tonight, how much money are we committing to spend on contract preparation? I mean, how much deeper are we going into this?
There's a fixed cost, me, that really doesn't cost you anything, and the three communities have actually taken a form of an agreement that is currently in place with a community that is currently served by Glenview, and that's Grays Lake. And legal counsel for the three communities, Highland Park, Lake Forest, and Lake Bluff, have the same legal counsel as Grays Lake. So we're pretty confident that the form of the contract that will come with you will not require much legal cost or preparation before bringing back something to you. The performance metrics are being worked on as well by the managers, and so, again, that won't be any additional out-of-pocket cost for the city council.
I would know if the agreement is on our word processing system.
Are the performance metrics going to be part of the contract or a side letter or what have you?
Right now, the idea is that they would be part of the contract, that there would also be a formal process for reviewing the metrics, going through them, because City of Highland Park and the Village of Lake Bluff have the same performance concerns that we do. We have heard from current clients of the Village of Glenview that the performance quality is still there, but we want to make sure that we can document them and work and report on them for a period of time, so that we can address any questions that may come back from our residents and address some of the issues that were raised here earlier.
Are you aware of any detractors from the that are customers of the Glenview program? Anybody that doesn't like it? Obviously, we could find, I would imagine somebody doesn't like it, but are there material reasons? Does anyone have a material argument against the Glenview process that you're aware of?
No, it's a great question, and it actually came up at the joint meeting on December 17th. And really, I think the only issue, and I think the police chiefs would be in agreement on that, is just a local control issue. That you do have to give up a certain degree of control, as I think Chief Held pointed out. It's nice for him to be able to just get up out of his chair and walk, 100 feet and be able to see the dispatchers, and he won't have that kind of control per se. But Grays Lake has been with the Village of Glenview for a number of years. They've picked up some other communities recently as well. And I think there's also some advantages besides, as Alderman Palmer pointed out, that I think we will have the first redundant 24/7 operating central dispatch system anywhere in the state of Illinois. And there's much to be said about that. Also, I think it's going to be some significant enhancements to the CAD system, which we've struggled with, and it's nice that Highland Park and Glenview also share the same CAD system, and I think we're going to be able to make some improvements there. So I think the hope, or anyways, of the three city managers is that the quality is actually going to go up, not go down. And that's, I think, our challenge. And that's what our goal will be to the three respective governing bodies.
I might take an opportunity right now to do exactly that. Let's, anyone in the public that would like to make a comment or address the council on this matter? Ma'am, do you want to come up? Ma'am, I'm sorry, could I ask you to come to the podium and, I'm sorry.
I've talked to this law a number of times over the 70 years I've been a citizen. I haven't had to use microphones. I think this is the worst thing I have ever heard proposed in the Lake Forest City Hall. I don't believe you would even.
Ma'am, could I ask you, I'm sorry, could I ask,
Sourcing.
I apologize.
911.
Could I ask you to use the microphone so we hear everything you say? Thank you.
I cannot believe that you would even consider outsourcing 911. And it sounds like Glenview has a lot of a huge operation going, and probably similar to the city of Chicago. And I suppose you do hear on television from time to time about the people who couldn't get 911 and somebody died, or somebody was shot, or somebody was. It's just unbelievable to me that you would even consider this. First of all, your figures here show that you don't make any money at all. This is the only thing that I've ever seen. I was sent a group of questions and answers, and I looked through and I looked at your figures, and you're not making any money at all. You say over a period of 5 years you're going to make $1.9 million, but you're going to pay $528,000 a year, which means that you're paying out $2.5 million. So you're not making a dime. You're losing money. And I really can't believe you're even considering this. You could outsource every other service in the whole city except for the police department, the fire department, and 911. And boy, if we become, I don't know whether you've ever considered what would happen if there was a catastrophe in Glenview or a catastrophe in the entire North Shore. Wouldn't we want to have our own 911 service in that situation? I mean, there are earthquakes, and there are not too many of them here, but there are fires, and the state of Illinois and the cities have had fires that have covered huge territories. I really can't believe you're considering this seriously. And I haven't heard anything from you that convinces me at all. And your figures, absolutely, you lose money. What I've been given by way of figures. You're paying more out than you're paying today in Lake Forest. I thought this was going to be a question and answer thing. That's the way it was presented to me. I had no idea it had gone to the city council. I really had no idea of that. So I thought I probably could find out more about it. But I really wish you would consider this very, very seriously. You could outsource every other service in the town. And these 3 services we should keep here and protect the health and safety of our citizens. I've used 911 3 times over my 70 years, and there's always been somebody there in 15 minutes. You always get them on the telephone, which you don't always do in a city like Chicago. Well, it's just the city. They've always come. The fire department they've always been there in 15 minutes, and it saved people's lives. I mean, I had a grandson who hit his head, like you do when you're 2 or 3 years old. You're just all over the house and you go crash, and blood was coming, spurting out of his head. And they were there in 15 minutes, and there you are. It won't happen if you do this. I promise you it won't.
Thank you, ma'am. Bob, just as a point of clarification, there is a net savings to the city, is that correct?
That is correct. Actually, the total cost would be the contract amount plus the approximately $1.9 million. And I think in the report, which is on the city's website, you can see a breakdown of what our current operating costs are, what the estimated cost would be under a consolidated dispatch through the village of Glenview, and then what that net savings is.
Okay.
There's another point, and that is we'll actually be safer. We talk about a disaster, we will have backup. If something happened now to our fire station or police department, we wouldn't have backup. We will have 2 different places where one can pick up from the other. And as Bob Kiley said, we'll be the only group in Illinois that has this. So we're actually better prepared for a disaster with the situation we're going. And the fact is that even though the dispatcher may be in Highland Park, which is probably where our people are going to end up as opposed to Glenview, police and fire are coming from our station. They're not coming from Glenview. So, you know, if we had the thing in New York, it travels at the speed of light. I mean, they will be coming from our station. So
my concern, and I agree with Alderman Palmer's comments about a disaster. I think it would we actually would be, if anything, better equipped in a disaster. But my concern is that the average person who calls 911, that response time is as quick. Because our dispatchers who are here in Lake Forest, they know our streets and they work with our police officers. And it's like a little family there, and you're breaking up the family. And is the person in Glenview going to know our streets in our city as well as those dispatchers that we have now? And we're talking where seconds make a difference. We're talking where 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds can be the difference between life and death. And this is just one of those areas where I just think we have to be really, 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 really careful here, because this is just too important, and no amount of money is worth sacrificing this. It's just not worth it. Whether we save $2 million or $5 million, it's just not worth it if we lose even a little bit of the service that we have today.
I'm gonna guess that the dispatchers in Highland Park will learn our streets the same way the dispatchers, new dispatchers, learn our streets. I'm gonna guess, if you looked at the background and experience of the dispatchers, that likely none of them were born and raised in Lake Forest. And they likely picked up the streets the same way anybody else would learn the streets. So, I mean, I just think that it's all about the rapidness is all about the technology. It's not necessarily, somebody who happens to be sitting here. That call can be just as quick and will be just as quick going into Highland Park with a backup to Glenview, and will be then passed on to police and fire just the same.
And Jack, I'm not completely convinced, and I'm not saying you're not making a good point, but having had some experience working with police officers and working in these situations, it's like I said, it's like a family. It's a unit that you have there, and the dispatchers and the police officers, they know each other and they work together, and you're breaking that up. And I'm not saying that it couldn't be done just as well. I'm just saying I'm not convinced, and I need to be convinced. And if it doesn't work just as well, or if it's even just a little bit worse, just a little bit, just a tiny bit, and we've gone down this path, how in the world do we turn back? If it doesn't work, we're stuck with it.
I can't, my sense is if it got bad, you could turn back. You would just systematically bring them back one at a time and wean yourself from the Highland Park operation or the Glenview if it doesn't work. But there's been no history of anybody that's converted over this system that's gone back.
Well, how do we know that? Have we talked to Grays Lake? Have we talked to these other communities? How are we just assuming that everyone's happy?
No, I believe we were told that. I have
think-
that in the back of my head that I've learned that, and I would have learned it at this meeting.
Why did they make the change? They might not have had a choice. We have a choice, so we just.
I have a question for Alderman Palmer, because there's a conversation that I had at one of the large group meetings, sort of offline, that was actually very powerful in moving me away from Alderman Waldeck's position and toward being favorable toward this strategy. In addition to the money that's being saved, which I know that's what everybody assumes that's all I think about because I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee, but and we do have a serious problem, everybody. It's coming toward us, and we do have to take that seriously, financially. I think there is a tendency to believe that Lake Forest can just continue to do everything the way we've always done it, and we'll be okay. But then when we talk about raising taxes, boy, the fireworks start. So, but the question for Alderman Palmer was, the comment was made to me, because I asked the question at the last meeting, why does Glenview want to do this? Why do you want to be in the business of providing this service? Because I wouldn't think of that as a core competence of a city administration or government. And the answer I got back was, this is coming. Whether we want to have it happen to us or not, these kinds of consolidations, these abilities to economize because of the progress of the technology, are being driven at the state level, and to some extent by the federal government through FEMA and so forth. And the question is, do you control your own destiny, or do you sit still and wait for somebody to tell you how you're going to do it? And here we have an opportunity to affiliate with other like-minded communities, Glenview, Highland Park. These are white glove communities that expect the same level of service that we do. The alternative might be a county-wide solution, or something where we would aggregate with the city of Chicago, to your point, ma'am. That's my understanding. I wanted to have Alderman Palmer maybe speak to that, because I suspect it's been discussed.
It is a trend, and the trend actually goes beyond that. It goes to having consolidated police and fire departments for many communities, where you wouldn't have a Lake Forest Police Department or a Lake Forest Fire Department. You'd have a multi-city fire department. And you know, the advantage is you actually have more resources that you can bring to a problem in your community, and it's more efficient than trying to plan for the worst case in your community and then do it in all the others. You can plan on a bigger basis. And you know, the costs of police and fire have just gone up, as is the cost of a lot of city services. And so communities around the country are doing this. And again, I think this is a very good operation, and there are a lot of pluses for our doing it with them at this point. And again, you know, I saw the camaraderie here, and I think that's something you're probably never going to get unless you're back in Mayberry, you know, with Andy Griffith, and you've got the police guy there, and it's a very small operation. But I think, you know, with GPS and everything else, and these people will be trained. Anyone will be trained on exactly our street layouts. We may actually get some of our dispatchers. There will be positions open. And so we may end up with people that know it very well. If it were an issue of impairing the safety of anyone in Lake Forest, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. I wouldn't go along with it. And so, you know, I've taken the time to acquaint myself with it. And, you know, I can't necessarily go into all the details, but to say, yeah, I beat this up and I looked at it real hard. And I don't think that these ideas that people may have, that there's going to be a longer time, I don't think that's correct. We will have actually more bodies there if there is some sort of mass disaster in Lake Forest. There will be more dispatchers available to handle the calls coming in. You know, we will, right now we have 4 on call, 12 hours each. And, you know, we will have twice that number at the station in Highland Park. So, and they will take calls as necessary. So, again, I think hopefully with the technology, which is also very expensive, if we want to keep it here, we're going to have a very, very big investment in technology. It's not just the people, it's technology too. And so this spreads the cost of that. And I think at the end, people will see it is a better system. I mean, there will be little inconveniences, but no safety impairment. So.
Ma'am, did you have another question?
How about the first person that dies? Do you put a dollar amount on that person because they didn't get weren't able to reach 911 and weren't able to get the safety and fire departments? What about the first person?
Let me put it back to you.
This isn't a matter of money.
Put it back to you, ma'am. What if there were a situation, which there could be, where our existing system couldn't handle that 911 call because too many calls were coming in?
But they do it.
So
for
somebody
70
died.
years.
Somebody died because of that. You can always posit the parade of horribles. The fact is, I don't think it's likely.
I don't understand.
You know, we, thank you, ma'am. One of the, as we started this process a year or so ago, I remember having a lot of the same concerns, Kathy, that you have and perhaps others have. And, you know, we're incredibly fortunate to have unbelievably dedicated and skilled city professionals on the police and fire department in this town. And I've asked both Chief Held and Chief Howell how they feel about this. And I think the feedback that I've gotten from both of them is, in a perfect world, it'd be great to stay just the way it is. But this is the next best alternative. And it, as I think Bob mentioned, as George mentioned, it gives us a great deal of control. It allows us to do something kind of under our rules, under our game plan. And while, yes, we do lose some control, and there's no question that it's a sad thing if we do lose some of those tremendously dedicated employees that we have. As George said, the time's coming. And if this is the next best alternative, but in turn, Chief Held and Chief Howell and their staffs are behind it, that's a good enough reason for me. Because if either one of them or either one of their teams said no, it puts our community at risk, then I think we don't do it. But I've not heard that from either one of them. And as many of you heard me say in the past, public safety is the #1 thing that we do as a community. And if there's anything that we would do to compromise that, we're doing the wrong thing. And I honestly, sincerely believe this is not going to compromise that.
Do you need a motion?
I do need a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I need a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Biddy, very much. We are going to consider directing the preparation of a contract for the outsourcing services. Next item on the agenda, additional items for council discussion. Any further items? I'm looking right at you, just in case.
You're looking at me?
No, I was looking at Mr. Edelman. If not, I would ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session for the purpose of consideration of sale or lease of city property as well as pending litigation.
So moved.
Second.
I need a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just wanted for the record to announce that when we come back in session, there's no action. It's just for discussion purposes only.
Great, thank you.
Here or downstairs?
We'll meet next door.
Hey, Bob.
Yes, she's 7. I said, let me guess, she's 7.